My mom turned me into a joke on Facebook. 12 days later, they regretted it. My name is Sasha Reeves. I am 28 years old. 12 days ago, my mother posted a photograph of me on Facebook with a caption that made 460 people laugh. Not a private joke between family, a public post. My full name in the caption. My face tagged. The kind of post that gets shared, that travels, that finds people who know you and people who do not, and gives both groups the same permission to be cruel. I did not comment. I did not call her. I did not send a single message to anyone who laughed, liked, or shared it. I closed the app, set my phone face down on my desk, and spent the next 12 days doing the only thing I have ever been good at when the people who were supposed to love me decided to use that love as a weapon instead. I got to work, and what I built in those 12 days, and where I chose to put it, is something my mother and every single person who clicked that laughing emoji is going to be explaining for a very long time. Before I tell you everything, take a second to like and subscribe, and drop your country in the comments below. Now let me take you all the way back. I want to tell you about my mother, Diane, because she is not a villain in the way that makes a story simple. She is not a cold woman. She is not a cruel woman in the calculated sense. She is something more complicated than that. A woman who loves her daughter genuinely and has spent that daughter's entire life expressing that love in ways that feel, from the inside, indistinguishable from control. She has opinions about my appearance, my weight, my career, my apartment, my cooking, my relationships, and the specific way I load a dishwasher. She delivers these opinions with the warmth of a woman who believes she is helping. The warmth is real, the damage is also real. Both things are true simultaneously, and I spent most of my 20s trying to hold them both without dropping either one. My career is in digital content strategy. I build online presence for small businesses, brand voice, content calendars, platform management, the architecture of how a company presents itself to the world. I started freelancing at 23, built a client base by 25, and by 27, I had enough consistent work to open a small LLC and hire one part-time contractor. It is not a glamorous business. My mother has never understood it, which I have always been able to accept. What I have been less able to accept is the specific way she describes it to other people. As something I do on my computer, said with the gentle, dismissive inflection that communicates clearly to everyone listening that her daughter's work is a hobby that has not yet become a real job. She has said this at family dinners, at Christmas, at my cousin's wedding last year, in front of her entire side of the family when someone asked what I do. I have corrected her each time, calmly, specifically, with actual numbers, and client names, and revenue figures, and each time she has absorbed the correction with a slight nod and then said the same thing the next time, as though the correction had not happened. I had concluded, by last spring, that this was not forgetfulness. It was a position. The post happened on a Thursday evening in March. My mother had been to a family lunch that afternoon, her sister, 2 cousins, the usual gathering that happens when her side of the family is in the same city. I had not been invited, which was not unusual. My mother and her siblings have a social life I am adjacent to, rather than included in, and I have made a separate peace with that. What I did not know until I opened Facebook at 7 that evening was that the lunch had apparently involved a conversation about me, and that my mother had decided to continue that conversation publicly. The post was a photograph. It was taken at Christmas 2 years ago, a candid shot I had not known existed, in which I am sitting at the kitchen table in my parents' house in an oversized sweater, with my reading glasses on, squinting at my laptop with an expression that is genuinely, objectively, funny looking. I will grant her that. The photograph itself is amusing. I have no objection to the photograph. The caption is what I object to. It read, "My daughter, the big business owner lol. She's been running her company for 2 years and still can't explain what she does. Bless her heart, she tries so hard." And then, because this was not enough, she had tagged me, my full name, my profile, linked directly to me, so that every one of her 460 followers could click through to my face and my name and my work, and read her assessment of it. The comments came quickly. Her sister wrote, "Haha, she gets that confused look from you." A cousin wrote, "At least she's keeping busy." A woman from my mother's church I had met twice in my life wrote, "So sweet that she has her little projects." And then, people I did not know, friends of friends, strangers who had been handed a joke and a target and a laughing emoji and had used all three freely. I read every comment. I want to be honest about that. I sat at my desk and I read every single one, because I have learned that there is a specific kind of pain that gets worse if you look away from it before you have fully understood its shape. I understood the shape of this one. My mother had taken the thing she had always said about me in private, and she had said it in public, at scale, with my name and face attached, and she had done it in a space where I had no ability to correct the record without making it worse. I put my phone face down. I opened my work laptop. I had a client presentation due the following week for a mid-size retail company that had hired me to rebuild their entire digital presence after a failed rebrand. It was the largest single contract I had signed to date. I worked on it until midnight, went to bed, and woke up the next morning and worked on it again. I did not contact my mother. I did not speak to my aunt or my cousins. I answered no messages from the 4 people in my life who had seen the post and texted to check on me, not because I did not love them, but because I did not have words yet that were useful, and I was not going to spend words I did not have. The presentation went well. Better than well. My client, a woman named Fran Okafor, who had built her retail business from a single storefront to 7 locations, and who was, by any reasonable measure, someone who understood what professional competence looks like, sat across the conference table from me on day 4 and said, midway through my 3rd slide, "Where did you learn to think like this?" I told her. She nodded. At the end of the meeting, she signed the extended contract that tripled the initial scope of our engagement. I drove home from that meeting and sat in my car in the parking garage for a few minutes. Not in distress. In the particular clarity that comes after something has been confirmed that you needed confirmed. The clarity of a person who has been told, repeatedly and publicly, that she is not serious, and who has just sat across from someone serious and been taken seriously. I thought about the post. I thought about the caption. I thought about my mother's voice at my cousin's wedding, the gentle dismissive inflection, the slight nod that absorbed nothing. I opened my laptop. What I built over the next 8 days was not a weapon. Exactly. I want to be precise about this because the distinction matters to me. I am a content strategist. I understand platforms. I understand audiences. I understand the specific architecture of how information lands differently, depending on where it is placed, how it is framed, and who is watching when it arrives. I used every one of those skills not to attack, but to make something true visible in the same space where something false had been made visible 12 days earlier. I wrote a case study, a professional case study, the kind I write for client portfolios, detailed and specific, documenting the work I had done for Fran's company, the strategic audit, the rebrand architecture, the content calendar, the platform metrics before and after my engagement, the revenue impact of the digital changes in the first quarter, real numbers, real outcomes, real work, documented the way real work gets documented by people who take their work seriously. I formatted it the way I format all my professional documents. Clean, precise, the kind of layout that communicates competence before anyone reads a word. I added a brief professional biography at the bottom. I added the LLC registration date. I added the client list. 7 names, all of whom had given me written permission to be referenced in my professional materials, because I had asked each of them, and everyone had said yes without hesitation. And then I wrote an introduction, 1 paragraph, not angry, not addressed to my mother or to any of the people who had commented, addressed to anyone who had ever been told that what they were building was not real, that the work they were doing on their computer was not a job, that their efforts were charming and small and a little bit funny. I wrote it in 5 minutes, and I did not revise it because what came out in 5 minutes was exactly what I meant. I posted it on Facebook on a Thursday evening, 12 days after the original post, tagged in my own name, the same profile my mother had linked to. And in the caption, simply, for anyone who was curious about what I actually do. Within the first hour, Fran Okafor shared it with a comment. She wrote, "This woman rebuilt my business. She is the most strategically precise person I have worked with in 20 years of being an entrepreneur. Curious about what she does? Hire her." 2 of my other clients shared it before the end of the evening, both with comments that were specific and professional, and said things I had never heard them say out loud, but that apparently they had been thinking. By the next morning, the post had been shared 41 times. Not viral, not a spectacle. Something more specific and more durable than viral. It had been shared by people in professional networks, by other small business owners, by women in entrepreneurship groups I had joined years ago and barely participated in because I had always felt too small to take up space in them. It had been seen by people who did not know my mother's post existed and who encountered my work as simply that. Work, standing on its own, requiring no defense. My mother called on Saturday morning. I let it ring. She called again in the afternoon. I let that one ring too, not from cruelty but from the understanding that I did not yet have the conversation she needed to have with me, and that having it before I was ready would serve neither of us. She texted that evening. The text said, "I didn't mean for it to go the way it did." I read it and put my phone down. My aunt called on Sunday, and I answered, because my aunt and I have a different relationship than my mother and I have, and because what she said in the first 30 seconds told me she was calling to deliver something, not to defend anything. She said, "Your mother has been crying since Friday." I said I knew. She said, "She's proud of you. She has always been proud of you. She just doesn't know how to say it in a way that sounds like pride." I was quiet for a moment, then I said, "I know that too. It doesn't make the post okay." My aunt said, "No, it doesn't." That was, I think, the most honest conversation I have ever had with any member of my extended family. 4 sentences. No performance on either side. Just 2 people agreeing on what was true. I called my mother on Monday evening. The conversation was long and difficult and real, the kind of conversation that is only possible after both people have had enough days to stop defending and start being honest. My mother said she was sorry, not in the bless her heart way, not in the wrapped-in explanation way. She said it plainly, which is the only way it counts. I told her what the post had done, not to my reputation, but to me, the specific interior damage of having the person who was supposed to be your first advocate become the person who turned you into a punchline for strangers. She listened. She did not interrupt. At the end she said, "I didn't know you were that far ahead. I didn't know what you'd built." I said, "You never asked." She was quiet for a moment, then she said, "I know." The original post is still up. She offered to take it down, and I told her not to. Not because I want the record preserved as punishment, but because I have learned that removing the thing people said about you does not undo the saying of it, and the response I built is more useful standing next to the original than standing alone in a vacuum. Let them exist together. Let anyone who finds one find the other. Let the whole picture be visible. Fran Okafor signed 2 referrals in the 2 weeks after the case study post. Both have become clients. My contractor is now full-time. I have a waiting list for the first time in 5 years of doing this work. I am not telling you this to perform triumph. I am telling you this because I want you to understand what the 12 days actually contained. Not a plan for revenge, not a calculation about how to humiliate my mother in the same space she had humiliated me, but 12 days of work. The same work I had always been doing. The same work she had always dismissed. Just made finally, fully, undeniably visible. She didn't make me a joke. She gave me an audience. I just used it differently than she expected.